Immigration reform is a hot topic in California, especially here in San Diego County. Joining me with details on how reform is shaping up in our border town is UC Davis immigration law professor Gabriel Chin. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
Professor Chin, one federal program that's gotten a lot of attention here locally is called the Secure Communities, which, just to remind people, calls for mandatory immigration checks for people when they've been booked into jail. But what can happen from that, my understanding is, the accused can actually be turned over to federal border agents and they can be deported.
Absolutely.
Is it local law enforcement's place to work on federal immigration issues?
It's a fine line. It's a fine line. I don't think that there's much controversy when we're talking about non-citizens who've committed serious felonies that they should be put into deportation proceedings. But the problem is when you're talking about people who've committed minor offenses, traffic offenses, trivial offenses, should they be scooped up and put into deportation proceedings? And the answer for a lot of people is no.
One particular caveat of this is racial profiling, especially when we're talking about SB 1070. Do you believe there's racial profiling kind of embedded in this law?
There is. Laws like SB 1070 typically say that the police aren't allowed to take into account race, color, or national origin except as permitted by the U.S. Constitution or by the state constitution. And the thing is that the U.S. Supreme Court held in a case called United States versus Brignoni-Ponce that police can take into account apparent Mexican ancestry, the fact that somebody looks like they are probably Mexican, in determining whether there is suspicion that they're in fact an alien.
What about other races? What about if you look Asian or you look Serbian?
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is that the cases, and I think this is very unfortunate, but the cases talk about apparent Mexican ancestry and not apparent Canadian ancestry, not apparent other ancestry. And the reason is, I think, because of the proximity of the Mexican border.
Now, you said something that surprised me and I think will surprise a lot of people. You said it's not a crime to be in the United States without authorization. That is not the crime. Tell us more about that.
That's absolutely true. It is a crime to cross the border without authorization. And it's also a crime, a felony, to enter the United States or be in the United States if you've already been deported. But if you come into the United States on a non-immigrant visa, a tourist visa, a student visa, and you overstay your visa even after it's expired, that's not a crime. And if you cross the border illegally and stay, just being in the United States, remaining in the United States, is not in and of itself a crime.
That is truly surprising. A lot of people would say, hey, what's wrong with local police? Coming back to the Secure Communities law, what's wrong with local police helping federal police enforce the federal law?
Well, there's two major problems. One is from the perspective of the police. And local police, their job, as they see it, is to keep the community safe, to protect public safety, prevent crime. And if local police are involved in immigration work, then people who might get deported won't talk to them. And if they won't talk to them, if there's a group of people who can't talk to the police, then they can be raped, robbed, kidnapped with impunity. So from the perspective of the police, having them involved in this kind of work really creates public safety problems. The other problem is from the perspective of the federal government. The federal government, the executive branch, is responsible for enforcing immigration law. And there's a lot of things that they can do with any given illegal alien, from deportation to some ways amnesty, asylum.
There's already a system in place.
There's a system in place, exactly.
Do you think that there are any laws or programs right now that, in your opinion, work well when it comes to balancing immigration, deportation, amnesty sort of issues? Is there something that you would say, hey, this is something with a little tweaking here and there might just fix the issue?
Well, there was a historical program that started in 1929, and it's still on the books, and it's called Registry. And what Registry does is it says if you've been in the United States for a certain period of time and you haven't committed a crime, even if you weren't here legally, even if you didn't come legally, you get to stay, so long as you haven't committed crimes.
Okay,
And
we're actually going to have to leave it there. I'm sorry,
right.
we're out of time, but people can find out more on our website, kpbs.org. Law Professor Gabriel Chin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.